I'm glad you could make it.
You can't believe how grateful I am. I had to hunt down rodents to get something to eat. Word of advice, never treat Silverquid to dinner. You will be broke afterwards.
Hope you like Indian food. Just be careful, it's kind of hot.
Are you kidding? I'm a literal firefox. I love hot stuff. What?
And we're back with the cutie map. For the most of this season we didn't even hear a mention of it, and while some believe that writers just forgot about it, it seems that Starlight's tempering somehow damaged it, or at least made it go dormant. So Starlight and Twilight, okay, when you say it out loud it just sounds silly, figured that it needs to be magically jump-started.
Okay, first of all, couldn't they give Starlight any lines? Seriously, I get the feeling that they don't know what to do with her when she isn't the focus. But most importantly, this explanation doesn't add up. After Starlight and Twilight return to the original timeline in the cute remark, the map seemingly works fine. Even after they discussed what to do with Starlight, it still displays the state of Equestria. Not to mention that this explanation wasn't really needed in the first place. We only got like 3 episodes last season to begin with, so it was pretty obvious that they won't use it as often as some of us might wish.
Well, maybe the map just got stuck on a loading screen. Sometimes hardware can still work while the software freezes. As for Starlight, well, remember, these were just the bees.
And last but not least, why did they use the map to send Rarity and Pinkie Pie to Canterlot? Pinkie Pie even lampshades a missed opportunity to visit some new place, and we don't need any excuse to set a Rarity episode on Canterlot. She probably goes there every other week anyway to deliver new dresses to her boutique.
Hey, there's a lot of places to see here. And it so happens that we get to see a new unique part of Canterlot. Restaurant Row. A street dedicated to fine cuisine. It kinda reminds me of a street in Warsaw called Nowy Świat. It's also full of classy restaurants and cafes.
Yeah, to be fair, this is somewhat of a decent idea. Most of the time we only see the inside of the castle while we are at Canterlot.
Still, knowing the kind of food that is served in those kind of places, and when you consider the last time Pinkie probably consumed 3 of Peter Parker's next paychecks, things don't go quite well.
Here the story kicks in. Every restaurant in Canterlot happens to be exactly the same. Same food, same design, the only difference is the shade of color and the geometrical shape within the paintings. And the food is apparently terrible.
And what'll it be? Grey lumps in brown sauce or brown lumps in grey sauce?
Well, free hoof rating or not, this would ruin the business for every pony on that street. If everything is the same, there's no real competition.
Say, Tricky, could you do me a favor and go to the cafe down the street and get me a cup of coffee?
But we're in the middle of a review.
Don't worry, I'll pay you back.
Holy Celestia! How can you live here? I could buy a coffee maker for this.
Well, I did it to illustrate something that is called Veblen goods. Named after the economist Thorstein Veblen, these are things that are valued not because of their brand or rarity, but because they are just expensive. This can be wines, cars, clothes, or even the so-called fine dining. Even though it is not of any better quality, the fact you can afford it raises your status in what is called conspicuous consumption. It's like when you were in kindergarten and the most popular kid was the one with the most expensive toys. This is largely what seems to be going on in Canterlot. Conspicuous consumption and brand consciousness surpass quality consciousness and otherwise common sense. This mentality is exhibited throughout this episode. The value is not how good the meal is, but because it is served in a restaurant with 3 hooves.
Well, you do have a point, and I ate at some really expensive restaurants in my days. However, usually the food was so good or unique that I happily paid for it. The location of course also affects the price. But this episode dumps things down to create a conflict, by making every restaurant the same, any potential emotional value gets lost. Imagine if every cafe in your town would be a Starbucks. That's nice and all, but you can't expect that every Starbucks would make enough money to survive.
Isn't Starbucks already across the street from another Starbucks?
Touché.
Still, in the concept of Veblen goods, quality is completely omitted for the price and exclusivity. You can literally slice an apple in equal halves, and a Veblen seeker will pay 10 times more for the expensive half just because it's more expensive. In fact, it outright encourages raising the prices for status sake. And while I wouldn't say that the episode dumps down everything, it does simplify a lot to prove a point. Subtlety isn't a strong point of this episode. And speaking of strong, Pinky's nose leads them to the only Indian restaurant in Canterlot. Here we meet Saffron Masala and her father Coriander Cumin, who have rather interesting designs. Aside from the Indian stylization, I think I like the best that their body colors match their respective spice. I've heard some people call them stereotypical, but honestly I cannot agree with that. They are ethnic, certainly, and they do display that they are proud of their legacy, but they are no more stereotypical than if Tricky here wore lederhosen. Also, it seems we have found our mission. The lack of clients seems to be driving the father and daughter apart.
I actually like those two. The pessimistic view of Coriander and Saffron's idealistic personality makes for a good contrast between those two, and while the cause of the struggle being the only unique restaurant is somewhat dumb, the struggle itself is quite believable. It is quite relatable that Coriander would grow so bitter in this position. Anyway, we also get a reminder that Rarity has at least a certain celebrity status by now, as she is able to convince Cesty Gourmand to visit the place. After all, it is no new complaint that apparently no one heard about the heroes that saved Equestria several times and the new Alicorn in town. Thankfully, they started to handle that better since season 5. Well, Rarity believes that a good rating from Cesty could save the restaurant from certain ruin, which is a reasonable assumption. The word of a famous critic can make or break a restaurant, I give it that.
And thus Pinky figures that she will be able to get a lot of guests to come to the restaurant, while Rarity can make it more appealing to the critic. Which nicely segues into a new song.
I think it's a pretty catchy tune. It is reminiscent of Bollywood music hits, which makes it quite unique compared to other songs of the show. The only bad thing I can say about it is that the lyrics are a little bit on the nose. Pinkie Pie basically serves the moral of this episode on a silver platter that you should be unique, while Rarity wants to force Coriander to adapt by copying every other restaurant in town.
I agree about the song, but I feel I have a rant coming up. Do you mind?
Oh, I see a fire in your eyes. Go ahead.
Thanks. A lot of people seem to feel that with her focus on conforming to the standard, Rarity has regressed in character to emulate Sassy Saddles. In my opinion, she did not, and here's why. In Canterlot Boutique, Rarity had a brand and Sassy messed with the marketing product. Here, Rarity was focused on establishing the brand to other Canterlot restaurants. Let's face it, a Ma and Pa style diner, for example, no matter how good, will never have standards to get 3 Michelin stars. And this was their goal: make the restaurant competitive on the terms set by Restaurant Row. I highly doubt that Rarity was successful with her dresses from the very beginning. And I mean actual dresses. She had to learn to standardize, or in other words, conform her works to fashion trends and set styles that are widely recognizable and accepted by the public. We even see her talking about current trends and researching styles to apply her creativity onto. If capes are popular, she makes capes. If princesses are popular, she made the princess dress. Customers have expectations that creators have to adjust to. If one was simply pushing non-conformism and so-called ungrounded creativity, they don't become the next big thing. They become Zephyr Breeze.
I've got my own style, and I think they were a little threatened.
Or take my experience, for example. When I first wanted to go to art school during a consultation, a lot of my works were either cartoon or comic based, and because of that, it was beyond evaluation. Not because it was bad or lesser form of art, but because it literally could not be judged properly, and thus I had to learn to draw more standard form of art for my skill to be evaluated at all. Or even on the internet. I first got noticed not for my own art, but because I posted a fan art of established characters on Yahoo groups. Anyone still remember those? Creativity needs some form of standard to be properly digested, especially a product-based one, and Rarity knows this. As for kissing up to the critics, to make it big in a place like Canterlot, a big city filled with prestige and as full of consumerism, you need more than just talent and big dreams. It might help to, perhaps, hire a manager that has many connections, who in turn will invite a journalist who has many readers, and his mere presence will attract a crowd to your opening. Or maybe a recommendation from a well-known dignitary to know other people. Or win a fashion show. You see what I'm talking about? Rarity knew what she was doing, she just did it the wrong way. I'm still under the impression that they were serving Indian food, they were just zestiized, if you want to call it that. You can compare it more to Simple Ways than Canterlot Boutique in how Rarity was more focused on her goal, there being Trendehoofs, to the point she went crazy. As for Pinkie Pie, if Rarity forgot her lesson from Canterlot Boutique, Pinkie seemed to have forgotten her lesson from the Treasure of Griffinstone. Not only did she fail to realize that her method doesn't work in this place, but her solution was just to try harder. Insert the definition of madness here. She even got snubbed by Minuet. Ouch. She and Saffron got 2 ponies and tourists nonetheless, which wouldn't keep the restaurant going for long, nor would it give it recognition. They needed a selling point that would work, and here it would be the 3-star rating.
But in the end they didn't need them, also they were hoof prints.
And here's where you're wrong, my friend. Rarity used herself as a well-known brand to recommend the restaurant, cutting Zesty and her standards out of the equation. Ponies of Canterlot knew Rarity and her status, which she used to recommend the tasty treat. They essentially found a loophole in the system. Again, this might sound harsh, but recommendation from someone of higher status is invaluable if you want to be noticed. Whether it be a person, a website, a YouTube channel, or even a collaboration.
So you are saying...
Rarity did not regress or turn into sassy saddles. She exhibited poor judgment while having good intentions, and maybe she looked down on Saffron and Coriander as newcomers who don't know exactly how a big city works, which is not a good thing either. Like I said, I'm not denying that Rarity was wrong in her judgment. They are just in an environment where conspicuous consumption dictates what's most likely to attract a crowd, and establishments have to obey in order to gain most income. That's simple economics. To be honest, this actually did happen to a really nice pizza place near me in real life.
That's pretty insightful, and you do have a point. After all, often you do have to start with what is popular at the moment before you can move on to do your own stuff. I also want to add that Rarity is not really in her element. She's most of all a fashionista. And Rarity values the opinion of popular ponies very high. What am I talking? She practically worships the elite of Equestria and values their opinion over her own. Several of her episodes revolve around the fact that she tries to win their favor because she wants to be like them. By now, she is a pony every pony should know, but it's still a part of her character. This is actually quite nicely shown when she eats the food at the first restaurant. She obviously hates the taste, but she would never admit it because as a proper lady, she's supposed to like what the elite of Canterlot likes. Or at least she thinks as much, and we know since Sweet and Elite that this is basically how the high society in Equestria works. The most famous person has an opinion and everyone else agrees, so she acts completely in character. And as she doesn't really know a lot about restaurants herself, of course she would model it after what is the most popular. Especially as they try to impress a critic that likes one thing and one thing only. Something Rarity is aware of. It is also worth noting that she doesn't turn into sassy salads. Why is it that I always end up talking about Cantaloupe Boutique lately? Anyway, while Sassy planned to mass-produce the princess dress, her plan revolved around the success of the signature dress. This one word, signature, is pretty important. While Rarity tried to force Coriander to become like everyone else, Sassy made sure that Rarity's boutique becomes known for something that sets her apart from every other boutique in Canterlot. As strange as it sounds, the princess dress wasn't yet still unique from a certain point of view. Canterlot Boutique was about Rarity's passion as an artist and how she lost the passion by doing the same over and over again to become known for something specific. This episode is about being like everybody else by abandoning your signature or being unique. While the lessons are similar, they are in fact not the same. But here comes Sesty Gomorn.
Good evening.
Okay, I have a few things to comment on.
He just had a rant.
And so did you. But here are my points. Number 1. We have another Rhinopon. Number 2. Are we sure she's a female? Cause she looks oddly androgynous. Come to think of it, someone looks not alive. Maybe that's how unicorn vampires look.
Well, she does suck the flavor out of everything.
Number 3. What is she wearing? It looks like a button-up shirt with sleeves sewn shut that goes much higher than it should. Why would any pony need pockets on their neck?
So, you two aren't related?
Do you want to take a dip in the pot?
Okay, I think we got carried away. Anyway, perhaps the thing that bugs me the most about this episode is the way Sassy or rather critics are represented. The lesson they tell us is that you should be unique, don't listen to others if they try to change you, and no one has the right to judge you. Well, this is true to a certain degree, but as presented in this episode, it seems like it tries to teach the audience to disregard all criticism, constructive or not. Sassy, the critic in this episode, is portrayed as an unlikable snob that likes one thing and one thing only, and she's completely wrong as evidence that the food served in all other restaurants is apparently terrible. She says something about subtle taste, and while it is true that high-profile cooking can involve a subtle taste that an average person might not be able to appreciate, it still needs to taste like something. A critic must be able to rate a wide variety and must be fair. But the way Sassy is portrayed here, it seems more like a critic wants everything perfect the way they want and everything else is not even worth their time. Sassy didn't even bother to try coriander and saffron's food before Rarity asked her, even though she visited before. Therefore, according to this episode, a critic is always wrong, and if you agree to that, why are you even watching this video? I could go into more detail about this, but that's a topic for another day. I would recommend to check out the Nostalgia Critic episode, When Are Critics Wrong? While it's more about film critics, he brings up some good points. Or do you think I'm off, Grey?
Well, personally I don't think this episode is saying all critics are wrong. Instead, there are more than just one opinion.
It stinks.
But because it tries to do it in an oversimplified manner, it doesn't come out that clear. Using Sassy's own words, it tries desperately. Still, we see that Rarity was able to use her status to get other ponies to give Tasty Treat a chance. This is called brand consciousness, and is another element of a society built around conspicuous consumption. And another thing I like about this ending is that Zesty doesn't get swayed to try this food, and while some chefs decided to change their style of cooking, I feel the overall change on Restaurant Row will be gradual, making it more believable because changes are not quick or easy, which is something I see many people almost expect from this kind of story. The lesson causing an instant change.
The revelation that pretty much every cook on Restaurant Row adapted to Sassy's taste makes this problem much more jarring. By simplifying the conflict to such a degree, it just becomes too unrealistic to be relatable in any way. The message is also way too direct and it completely disregards unfortunate implications in the process. The ironic thing is that Sassy claims that art lies in subtlety. And yeah, this is exactly what is missing from this episode. However, While I do have some problems with this episode, I don't think it's really bad. I do like Saffron and Coriander, and I like the song. I think this episode could have been a little bit funnier, but my real problem simply is that it's way too predictable. Overall, it's rather average as a result.
Overall, I really like this episode. In fact, thus far it's my third favorite episode of this season. The predictability and lack of subtlety didn't bother me at all. I'm even willing to say that in times it wasn't predictable at all. I like the new characters and seeing a new part of Canterlot. The reason why I decided to go on this rant defending Rarity is because I feel a lot of people vilified her, while her reasoning was fully in character. The real problem was that she was put in a very black and white situation to serve the moral. Well, like I said, even Pinky wasn't completely in the right. I don't even blame the writing, cause unlike another episode that wasted half of its runtime on a stupid running gag, I feel this episode had packed quite a lot into it, and most of it was good. I think the only thing I would change was some wording and presentation. This should have been a story with no clear answer. You need to make some sacrifices in order to get noticed, but you shouldn't lose what makes you special. Plus I got to talk about psychology of social economics, so that's always interesting. If I'm allowed to use a cooking terminology, this episode felt 5 minutes undercooked. But still, I can see it being in my top favorites for a long while. Plus it had both Indian food and marshmallow pie.
Where did you see any... Oh, you mean Rarity and Pinky.
Yep.
Anyway, what are your thoughts? Did you like this episode? Anything that bothered you?
Let us know in the comments.
I am Tricky Fox. Stay foxy.
And I'm Grey Silvermane, the gentle cold of Canterlot. Okay, now help me clean this place.
You still owe me for that coffee.
I like it. They got kind of a Siskel and Ebert thing going.
The animation is awful. They just recycled mouth movements without moving the characters. Fat.